What's up, friends? Welcome to Web3 Academy, a place for entrepreneurs, creators, and marketers to explore and learn how to use Web3 to transform business models and create thriving communities. Enjoy this next episode.
GM, what's up, Web3 doers? Welcome to Web3 Academy. It is the weekly doer spotlight. I am your co-host, Jay, and as always, I have my fellow co-host, Kyle Reedhead, with me. What's up, Kai?
What's up, friends? Happy to be here for another round.
Today on the pod, we have Grant Magdanz. Super stoked to have Grant on the pod. Grant worked for Commonstock for years, which is Web2 social network. So he's got a really great background in growth of Web2 social networks. And we're going to get into his rabbit hole story, but he grew Commonstock and was part of growing them from 8 people to 35 people and has taken that experience now to GM. He joined the GM team as the third founder in February after a few months, I think, of talking in the background to the team at GM. And as so many of us has just been sucked into the Web3 rabbit hole. And once you're there, you can't go out. Welcome to the show, Grant. Great to have you today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Really excited for this chat today.
Awesome. Us too. So why don't we just start as we always do? We love to hear the Web3 rabbit hole story. You know, what sort of take us back to the first crypto you bought, the first NFT you bought. You know, who got you into it? Is there one person who sort of told you? How did you kind of fall down the rabbit hole first time?
Yeah, I'd say my crypto journey was kind of a step function. Started off, so I studied computer science in school, and at the time, like, Bitcoin was definitely around and was talked about. I didn't know much about it. Took a distributed systems class and we talked about Bitcoin. I wish I had thought more. Wish I had thought a little more in depth about it at the time, beyond just purely kind of like technical distributed system. So that was like absolute like very first exposure. Kind of like had an idea of what Bitcoin was and how it worked. Did not know much more than that. Was not part of the community. Did not buy any. And then in 2017, when that bull market happened, really got kind of like sucked in to ETH. Really still didn't know anything what I was doing. Bought a lot of altcoins that didn't go anywhere. Did buy some ETH, which I was happy about, but like to be totally honest, was like pretty in it for the gains. The technology was like interesting, but I didn't, again, think about it in depth enough. Didn't truly dive down the rabbit hole enough, and also wasn't really surrounded by kind of many people who kind of like understood it at that level. So things quieted down kind of end of 2017, early 2018. Still followed it some, but not nearly the same. And then when it really started, kind of like making a comeback in 2019, 2020. Started following again. That's really when I would say like truly like started internalizing a lot about Web3 and a lot about crypto, and started reading more, started talking to more people about it. And that's kind of like once I started seeing kind of like DeFi, that's probably like the first thing I got into, because when I got out of it in whatever it was 2018, like DeFi was like just like I remember like Maker kind of coming out like online. I kind of remember like Compound, but like did not understand what they were actually doing. And I kind of remember coming back and like, oh wow, these projects are like, these are legit, and they have like billions of dollars in them. Like these are like really legitimate products. They're solving really cool problems. So I think that's really kind of like what hooked me, is that, okay, like again, the use case thing, right? Like here are like very like clear, real use cases kind of like of crypto beyond just like sending money across borders and things like that. So DeFi, and then NFTs first into NFTs was Top Shot. I kind of like had heard about NFTs before, but like Top Shot came around. I was like, oh, this is like I follow sports. I'm not a crazy sports fan. I follow it some. And Mike and I were actually we worked together before. So Mike's the other co-founder. We were working together at Comstock. We like worked together for a week. We were living in different places, worked together for a week, just to, I don't know, have someone to work with, because we were always working from home. And I remember like there's like the NFT craze, and we're like starting, and we're like find top shots, and like starting to look into it. And again, like most things, did not dive deep enough down the rabbit hole to to really like make the most of it. But again, there's something that's like, okay, like I can see how valuable this is. And then the last step function really happened about a year ago. I took like the Consensus has like a Solidity bootcamp that's like 3 months. And that was honestly like really leveled up kind of my understanding of kind of like Ethereum in particular, but kind of like smart contracts in general. Like before I'd understood how they worked and had poked around with them some, but it was really cool. Like, oh, wow, like I can see kind of the especially as a developer, like the power of kind of like building these composable systems on top of smart contracts. So that's kind of the whole journey, and then now working it full time. But that's the journey.
I love it. I love to hear the rabbit hole stories. There's so many fun things that went on over the years. Let's step back for a second though. And why don't you just tell us what GM is? I mean, we hear GM all the time. Jay says it twice before every episode.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are people who don't know what GM is. So why don't we start off with some context? And Grant, why don't you just give us kind of the high level overview? Like, what is GM? What are you guys doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So our domain is GM.xyz. So that's website. You can find us there. There's kind of a short-term and a long-term kind of like vision here. The long-term vision is kind of create a user-owned kind of decentralized social network, and we can get into more about kind of like the issues with existing kind of like Web2 social networks, but that's kind of like the long-term vision. The short-term vision, kind of like getting there. Social networks had this like classic cold start problem, right? Like, how do you get someone to whatever, go to a bar where no one's at? How do you get the first 5 people to show up? And the short term is to create kind of like tooling for communities and kind of a place for Web3 communities, whether that's DAOs, NFT projects, kind of whatever it is, to kind of spin up their communities and actually run their communities in a much more kind of like Web3 native fashion. So that's kind of how we see as like on board to solve this cold start problem. Is there's very real problems that these communities face, mostly on Discord, but across the board. It's not Discord specific, and solving those problems to bring people on board. And then once there are kind of communities on board, then we can start working on kind of like the more generic social network aspect and the decentralization.
Yeah, we had Brad from Lens Protocol on the podcast maybe a month or so ago. So we got to dive a lot into sort of the Web3 social side of things, and I want to pick your brain on that and see where you guys align and don't align maybe. But I think we'll hold off on that. Let's go with kind of what your guys' current product is, which is kind of solving problems for existing tokenized communities or DAOs. Right now, we all use Discord, and I think I see a tweet every single day, at least, of someone saying Discord's the worst platform ever, and everyone's always, losing their mind about Discord. I personally don't mind Discord. I know Jay also doesn't like Discord. I think I don't hate it. I always just say, like, what's the alternative, and like, what can we do to improve it? Because I honestly don't really know. What do you find is the sort of UX issues or just overall issues with Discord right now? And I guess what is GM doing to try to solve that or improve on that?
Yeah, great question. So I'll say like Discord as a product is a very good product, right? It's like Discord is being misused is what I would say. Or Discord is not being designed kind of for these large Web3 communities. So Discord works great if you are kind of like a group of friends and you game, right? It works great it works at least decently for like distribution style things as well. But where it breaks down is exactly kind of what crypto communities are, which are kind of these like loosely hierarchical, kind of like large kind of like organizations, right? Where it's not just a top-down thing. It's not like one person or like 5 people trying to like distribute information. It's also not like 20 people just like all chatting together. It's like sometimes there are 5 people who need to reach everyone. Other times there are like 50,000 people that are all trying to like talk to the same 50,000 people or 5 people. And we get on Discord is there's a few problems. The biggest issue is that like chat doesn't scale to the size of most crypto communities. And that's really like the fundamental issue that we see. And there's a lot of ramifications of this. One is it's difficult for community moderators, community managers to distribute information because a lot of stuff gets lost in all the noise, right? I'm sure you've been in Discord channels when like mints are going on, right? It's just like chaotic, and you have to know it's chaos, and there's a lot of like tribal knowledge around like, okay, like this is where like this is like the channel that they're going to post announcements to, right? And it's like fairly standardized. Like usually it's called announcements, but like not always. And it's difficult. It's also really hard for community members to stay up to date with the communities they care about, right? Because like, okay, I'll go to the announcements channel, like I can do that, right? But then it's like, where do I go for anything else, right? Any other quality discussion? Anything on Discord is kind of like lost in a week, right? So unless it's in like one of these announcement channels that's like unidirectional, any sort of like actual conversation that's happening, and even that could be like whatever, some like snapshot proposals, right? Something that's like pretty important to the community. Most of that stuff is lost almost immediately. And going back and like sifting through all like chat messages to find the stuff that's important is really hard. And if you're a part of whatever, if there are even 5 communities you want to keep up with, right, you're probably checking like 10 to 20 channels a day per community, right? And you're talking about like, in order to keep up, right, you're checking like hundreds of channels a day in order to keep up. And then you have to read all the messages and discern kind of like, okay, this is just like banter, this is like whatever, something I don't care about, or this is actually like really helpful discussion. And even if you find the helpful discussion, it's difficult because it's chat with large groups of people. It's difficult to follow discussions sometimes too, right? It's like, okay, like which message they reply to, and you like click up to it and like scroll down. And it's like, okay, that's a different question. It's unrelated. And so there's all these kind of like issues. And again, it's a problem inherent to real-time chat with large groups of people. It's not really a problem inherent to Discord, other than Discord is real-time chat. And they use it for large numbers of participants. So that's kind of like a whole category, and probably like the biggest pain point that we see. And I don't know, but with a lot of the people that we talk to, that's typically where the sentiment of like, oh, I hate Discord comes from. It's overwhelming. Like, let's see, I have 869 unread messages on Discord right now, right? Like that's like, and most of them, like I'm sure 865 I don't care about, right? Like that's the reality of it. And I think that it's also the other thing I'll say about Discord. I think some of them maybe like the more experienced moderators we talk about is that it's really, because Discord can be difficult and really intimidating, it's kind of this barrier to entry for new people who are interested in your project. Because people have to be like pretty interested initially to get involved. And I've had this experience where like I've been on the fringes of communities and like I usually fall off. Once I get over them, like really in it, then it's great, right? You feel the community, which is what chat is so great with, right? You feel the community, that real-time interaction, like you get questions answered, like it really is incredible. But that barrier to entry is oftentimes really high. So there's a lot of people who could be interested in your community who may convert to like really like engaged community members who just fall off because it's like, okay, I don't have enough time to understand how this community is organized, right? There's 80 channels. I have no idea how you organize. And then number 2, I'm not interested enough right now to actually like try to keep up with the kind of things that I care about. So that's kind of like one whole problem. Second problem with Discord, I'll be a lot faster on this one. The second problem that we see a lot and talk to community managers a lot, and this is actually like really much more like emotional problem for community moderators, is there's a lot of spam on Discord, and Discord makes it really hard to get rid of spam. And there's a number of different reasons for this. DMs kind of being like universal in one spot makes it really hard. There's no Discord being isolated, like being this silo. There's no way to like figure out like real identity, or just kind of like have some like not even necessarily like real world identity, but there's not an easy way to verify whether this person is who they say they are, or if they have any clout or anything like that. Like at least on Twitter, if someone like DMs you, right, you can go look at their profile, right? Like okay, like how many followers they have, people that I follow them, like what are they tweeting about, like you can get a sense of that, right? But on Discord, that's really hard, right? People can just change their username to some mod, and DM you, and it's a really, really painful experience. And it not only like ruins a lot of people's experiences, like in particular communities, it can really ruin people's experiences, kind of like with crypto in general. So that's another area that we see, and support's very closely related to that, because a lot of spam happens, a lot of kind of like scams happen, kind of like through like what users think are support channels. So those are kind of like the biggest pain points that we see with Discord, and the ones that we're really focused on trying to solve.
It's great explanation. Jay, would you agree with that? Anything you would add?
Yeah, I would completely agree. I think the few things to just quickly add that came up for me were, one, I remember one Discord that I'm quite active in that is just like you said, it's like a flowing river that if you aren't staring at that river every minute, you miss like an entire, you can miss like 100 comments, right?
Yeah.
And then you feel like you have no idea what's going on. It's so hard to get back into. And so this one Discord community, somebody started offering virtual assistants within the Discord. So you could hire a virtual assistant who would basically manage your Discord. And I was like, whoa, like that's a ridiculous solution to this problem. Like, you telling me that if I want to be active in Web3, I need to go hire a virtual assistant who manages all my Discords? Like, that was one funny solution that I did not hire a virtual assistant. I was like, wow, like maybe that's what I need to do. The other thing I think that comes up for us a lot is this idea of, I think this is more me being upset with some founders, is I think a lot of founders are using Discord to build an audience, not build a community. Kyle always uses the metaphor of Discord is like your community center or your community hall, not your megaphone to create your audience, to broadcast. And so I think that distinction is also really important, because I think that distinction is what is causing a lot of these issues where you have 50,000 people in a Discord. I don't know, can you, and this might be a separate conversation, but like, can you create a 50,000 person community? Like, is that really the right steps to building community? That, I'm kind of talking more about community versus audience now, but that's the other thing that sort of pops into my head.
Yeah.
Those are, go ahead, Kyle.
No, take it away.
We talk about this in I think this is similar, but kind of like a different frame. We talk about this like internal versus external communication a little bit, right? There's this like external, like top of funnel that communities are really interested in. And it's really important, right? It's really important for communities to have like top of funnel, at least for a lot of communities that are like interested in people like knowing about their project and asking questions and things like that. And then there's kind of like this like internal, like actual like community, right? Like people who are like really involved in it, who aren't just like kind of interested in keeping up, but who are actually doing like the day-to-day things. I think you're exactly right. Like Discord is oftentimes being used for both those things, and it's not really a megaphone.
Yeah, and that's actually why we started a newsletter, because and sort of the podcast too, is like originally we want to start a community, and we were like, wait a minute, you can't start a community on its own in Discord. We need to have another way to speak to people, to broadcast like your radio station or your television. And then when they need to get shit done or have questions, you go into the Discord, and that's where you can communicate. That's the way I see it. I'm curious though, maybe there is, and really what I see then is like, it's like Discord is not a scalable way to build community. You need to have the podcast, the newsletter to scale the like announcements and the news and whatever. And then you have the Discord to like communicate. Is what GM is doing then? Like, are you guys trying to find a way that you can scale the social aspect? Like, how are you guys trying to solve some of these Discord issues? Or do you just see it the same way as we do? And it's like, you can't have it all in one. You got to have your like broadcasting over here and then your social aspect over here. Like, how do you guys think through that?
Yeah. So where the product started is actually kind of, this has been kind of like a journey for us. We've learned a lot kind of in the process of this. Kind of where the product started is very much like, okay, like the issue is chat, and like, let's create a platform that is like a crypto native Reddit, right? Forum and post, right? Forum and post, great for long form content, great for large discussion, great for separating signal and noise, because people can upvote and downvote. You can come back, like if you go to whatever ETH Finance on Reddit, you don't need to read every single post and every single comment to find generally what the community thinks is valuable, right? Like you can sort it, and you can look at the top 15 things from the last week or last month. You can kind of catch up quickly on what you missed. So there's a lot of advantages for forum style communication, especially in larger communities. And you see this in Web3, right? You see communities like Bankless and others like spin up discourse, right? Which is like open source forum style. It's where they do oftentimes governance proposals, budgeting, kind of things like that, right? Things where you need large scale discussions, and it's like long form content. So that's kind of our idea of solving this at first. Is like, okay, like we do like forum style, and that will kind of like address these issues. And we learned that was pretty naive, because chat has a lot of benefits to it. There's a lot of great things with chat. Again, it's great for small communities, right? Like if you have 10 people, it's like fantastic. Or if you want to have a quick group of whatever, of the moderators or whatever, like devs, like chat's fantastic for that. Chat's really good for building community. Like forum style, like it's something we've learned, like forum style communication, like, I don't know, like you can build community, like Reddit, like there's communities and subreddits and things like that for sure, but not in the same way it is on Discord. There's there's a difference, and there's a level of like connection that you can have with someone or a group of people in real-time chat that you can't have.
It's real time. That's why, right? It's
real time. Exactly.
Agreed. Okay.
Yeah. It's like people, it's like it's only like a slight shift away from like an actual conversation, right? It's like the medium is different, but the feeling is the same.
Right.
And we see this with communities, and this is probably like our biggest, we talk to communities and we see communities need both, right? Again, Bankless has discourse. They also have Discord. ETH Finance has a pretty active Discord, right? So they have a subreddit that's one of the more active subreddits on Reddit, and they also have like a very active Discord. We also see this both with Reddit and Discord. Reddit is rolling out, or at least with specific communities, has chat style posts now. You can post something, and instead of comments, it can be a chat room. And we see communities use this. I don't know if you're familiar with Project Stepin, but they have a in their subreddit, they have a post that's pinned to the top. It's just like, hey, like this is just like the chat room, like whatever, like people drop in and like chat about things, like and Discord is rolling out forum style channels as well. So Discord, it's in beta right now, but they are essentially taking pretty much how it is implemented is it's their threading feature. Just that like a message, that the like root message is now like a post, and then threads are comments. So across the board, we see this as something that's needed. So we are just about to roll out chat on GM. So we see it kind of as a place to kind of get both of those, where for announcements, for governance proposals, for whatever it is, if you want feedback from your community, there are like actual posts you can post. You can have comments, you can have upvotes. We just rolled out roles. So we have like a full role system where you can say for these, we call them topics, for like these certain topics, these people, and can be based on tokens, these like certain token holders have access to only view this, or these certain people can post, but they can't. But this like you pretty much have it. So like it's view, comment, and post, and you can kind of slice and dice that across your community in any way possible. So how we see we're starting to be more in the middle than we used to be, in terms of like, is like a forum style or is chat like the way to go? We've kind of converged on like, hey, like communities really need both for very different reasons. And that the hope is that by having an outlet for long form content, that it'll be easier to stay up to date on like the most important things that you care about. Because if you're a moderator, if you're like having discussions, like that stuff should happen in kind of like a post, whereas kind of the more real-time stuff will happen in chat.
So it sounds like the merge of like the Reddit style and the Discord style is like where this is all going, and Reddit's already doing it, Discord's already doing it, and the GM is now trying to do it. I'm curious, like, what does GM do? Like Discord is pretty big, Reddit is huge. Like, you guys are trying to take on some behemoths here. Is it the fact that you guys are going the kind of the Web3 native side? Like, cool thing I noticed when I get to GM is like you immediately have to sign in with your wallet. I could join, I'm part of Bankless DAO, so I could immediately join into the Bankless Academy community, and it just looked into my wallet, saw that I had enough tokens, and boom, I was in. Discord, you can't do that. Reddit doesn't even have this functionality, though they are talking about building these kind of things. But is that your sort of like bread and butter that you think is the thing that's going to elevate you guys, or is there something else that you guys have that you're building in as well?
No, you're absolutely right. That like having a wallet connected gives us like an advantage in a way that like Reddit and Discord will like never be able to compete with. Like fundamentally, they can try, but at the end of the day, that primitive opens up all these doors. So kind of the stage we are in now, we kind of like shift back and forth. And the stage we are in now is that there's kind of a lot of just like basic functionality that communities need to run their community that doesn't really have anything to do with Web3. Again, they kind of need chat. We think they need forums, they need some sort of roles, right? They need ways to put up rules and FAQs, right? There's kind of like all these basic things that a community needs. And then there's a lot of things that user needs, right? They want to be able to have push notifications. They want to have a mobile app, right? They want to be able to mute certain people. They want to be able to follow certain people. They want to be able to like set their notification preferences, right? There's kind of a lot of things that in this day and age that users just kind of expect out of the box, kind of with any application, whether that's Web3, Web2, whatever it is. So a lot of what we're focused on right now is building out kind of like the basic kind of like tooling that communities and users need for it to be useful at all. There is some like Web3 stuff. I mean, like, again, like you said, like you can token gate communities, you can token gate specific roles. We pull in like NFTs and POAPs onto like users' profiles. Like you can see all that sort of stuff. So that's there. But the really cool stuff is yet to come, kind of around Web3. And like here's one of the ones I'm really excited about. And I don't know if we will build this, full disclosure. I don't know if we will build this. I think there's a lot of potential. So before I joined GM, there was a user. I honestly think this happened like Thanksgiving Day. There's a user who created a username that had like a slur in it. So they were banned. They came back immediately with a different account. They're banned, came back immediately with a different account. Because part of the issue is that now it's really easy to create accounts because it's just a wallet. And Mike and Matt had this really good idea, which is like, okay, let's just gate signups by having some minimum amount of ETH in your wallet. And they did that, and the person stopped, didn't come back. And we've seen that happen before. So there was early on in the project, there were a lot of people would come just like this, like when all the like airdrops were happening, were like come to like and just like post a bunch of like content, and some like genuine spam. And we bumped up. We kind of like looked at how much ETH people had in their wallets, and we're like bumped up like a little bit over the average. And it was like it wasn't much. I mean, like at the time, I think it was like $10 in ETH. Now it's like $2 in ETH. It's pretty much just like non-zero. It's about the threshold. And we have had almost no spam. And part of that is that we are small, for sure, right? Like there has to be some value. But one thing that we could do, which is really exciting, is that I think the takeaway here, for our takeaway at least, is that like having like it doesn't take much friction to kind of like render spam like cost and effective, right? Like if it's free, why not spam, right? If it's slightly expensive, like spam doesn't work all that often. If it has some cost to it, it starts being pretty ineffective. And the idea here was like, okay, if you have to like pay a couple bucks in gas every time you want to like load up a new wallet to spam, like it's probably not going to be worth it. So we've talked about some with communities is potentially allowing communities to set up roles where users would be required to like essentially stake something, right? And if they're deemed kind of like a bad actor in some way, like similar to proof of stake, like they could be slashed. And we like, it's, we need to feel like we don't have a lot of clarity on what this actually looks like, right? There's a ton of questions around like, what would they actually stake? Like, what does that smart contract look like? What does it mean? I mean, biggest question, what does it mean to be deemed a bad actor? Who gets to decide that, right? Like, that's not probably like, you can't like mathematically prove something is spam like you can in certain cases of proof of stake. So there's a lot of details to figure out then, but like, that's something that we can do that Reddit and Discord just won't be able to do. And there's a lot of things that we could kind of explore in that area, but that's only available because we have users' wallets connected.
Right.
I'm fired up about that. That is huge unlock. Because you said before, one of the biggest problems with Discord is the spam issue. And not only is it a big problem because people are losing money and it affects, it is a huge turnoff for onboarding to Web3.
Absolutely.
And that is a problem for all of us, right? Like
Absolutely.
everybody in the space, anytime somebody has a negative experience and gets scammed, they might leave and never come back. And
100%.
I don't think we can downplay that, right? So that would be incredible if you guys could solve that. And I think you nailed it. It doesn't have to be, I mean, it doesn't have to be some, huge amount of money that people have. We've talked about the same thing with email previously on the podcast. We talked about how there was a product that was looking to just basically do the same thing with email. In order to send an email to somebody, you would have to pay like pennies, but because it was costing pennies, then spammers wouldn't do it anymore. And you might solve the email spam issue too. So yeah, respect. I'm stoked.
Someone's got to figure it out.
No, someone does. And it's like, it's something that crypto enables, right? In a way that would be like, you might be able to do something like that in like a Web2 world, but it'd be hard, right? You need like credit card information, like issue refunds. I mean, it's just kind of like, it'd be kind of a pain.
Right. So I want to get into sort of the future of Web3 social in a second, but I'm curious, a lot of our audience has communities or is building communities, whether that's like NFTs or DAOs or whatever. Is GM getting into trying to be like all the DAO tools? Like when you're a DAO, for example, you want to do something with voting and you might use like Snapshot, or you want to, do Coordinate where you want to send out tokens to people who have been helping and whatever. So like right now in the DAO space, everything is everywhere. And there's just a million different tools. You said one of Discourse, I think you said Bankless uses. Are you guys trying to build in all those tools as well? Or will you like open up APIs and integrate a bunch of tools in, or what are you guys thinking there?
Yeah, really great question. It's the latter. Like we see ourselves as like our bread and butter is like the communication. Like we don't plan to build something like Coordinate or Snapshot or any of those. It's like I would say that this isn't, again, don't hold me to this, but I think a loose mental model is that like if it's kind of like in Discord or done by like a Discord bot, that's kind of something that we're looking at and talking to community members about. If it's really like its own separate application, like Coordinate, Snapshot, I mean, they work, right? And people use them because they solve very real problems. And I don't really see us like getting into that space. I think absolutely we will integrate with those at some point. I think there's like a ton of like really cool things that we could do to integrate with Snapshot in community, just like, again, other Discord bots do, but where you could easily see, right? You could have whatever, like a forum post, and you could integrate with Snapshot. You could actually pull in like live counts to that or something, right? Or you could actually pull in, you could actually look, and you could see, again, I don't know if we'll actually do this, but you could actually see in someone's community, because we have public address, you could actually see what they voted on in different proposals, right? You could see like, oh, this person voted on this proposal, or this person like voted this way on this proposal, right? And there's kind of like a lot of things that we could do around integrating, which is really exciting, but not in terms of replacing.
Okay. So do you see yourselves then as the one thing I'm constantly trying to figure out from the UX part of communication with the community is, where's the homepage? There doesn't seem to be a homepage. So when we talk about this, DAO tech stack, for example, you've got Coordinate, you've got Snapshot to manage governance, So is GM the homepage, or is there, I'm just curious what your thought, where is the homepage?
Yeah,
Where do you think where does it fit in?
that's right. So homepage for the community, you're saying, right? Like what's
Yes,
like
for the
where do you like
community.
to go?
Yeah.
It's a
Not
great
their
question.
marketing homepage, but community homepage.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an excellent question. What I would say is that it probably depending on like the stage of the kind of like of the community. I think early stages, it probably will like we hope at least think there probably will be something like GM, right? Like mostly all they have is like, because there's a lot of communities out there that don't even have tokens yet, right? Like they're like communities, they're like call themselves DAOs, they're like more just like kind of a group of people like really interested in like in crypto, and that's awesome, right? I'm not disparaging that at all. I think for a community like that really is solely based around communication. Like the communication kind of like platform would be kind of like would be the homepage. One of the things that we would like to do that's on our roadmap, and this goes into kind of like again progressive decentralization, things like that, is to open up our APIs. Because one of the for larger communities on the others, because we've talked to a few communities, or like few like communities that are trying to start that have existing brands and things like that. We'll have like a couple 100,000 people, and they're interested in like owning their brand, right? Like they don't want to be C/ whatever on GM, understandably, right? They want you to go to community.x.com and you're there. And I think for larger communities, I think that's probably where we'll go, is that they will own the experience and they will integrate into Coordinate, into Snapshot, but also into GM to pull kind of like the community and social. And we were even talking with other people about that, about who have like communities themselves, and they're interested in GM being like the comment section effectively, right? Can they integrate GM into, like, they want to post their own like proprietary research, but they don't want to build a comment system. They don't want to like deal with that. So they're like, hey, like, can we integrate with GM and like use GM to like back this like comment system, but really for the most part own the user experience for our members. So that's the route that we're planning on going, is opening up these APIs. And GM.xyz is like one place that you could go to interact with the community, but other people could spin up other clients. Communities could spin up their own clients that are specific to their communities, all kind of built on top of GM. So that's kind of like the future that we envision, at least.
So when we talk about ownership of communities, right now I look in the Web3 space, and there's GM, which is kind of like the Reddit. And then there's like Lens protocol, which I mean is the underlying social graph, but what's on it right now is like the Lenster, which is kind of like your Facebook or your Instagram sort of thing. So fairly different things here. One sort of social, building audiences, one's focused on communities. The difference that I see right now, and this is something that you guys say, is that you're going to progressively decentralize, right? Like Lens protocol is like everything you do on there, you basically own. It's minted as an NFT. Right now, anyway, GM is not that way, other than connecting in and integrating with Web3. It itself as a platform, I guess, is not Web3 technically. Talk about like why you started that way, if you can, and like what this whole progressively decentralized means, and like what that looks like in the end. What's the plan there?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we're really upfront about this. This whole post on our website in the about section kind of about it. We are not like decentralized. Like our tech stack is like AWS. Like we are a very traditional Web 2 tech stack. I think that the simplest way to put this is that like we read from the blockchain, we don't write to the blockchain. So we're not like, we don't have like in-house smart contracts. We're not issuing NFTs or tokens. But we are like you said, integrating with the blockchain, like reading data and validating data.
What Twitter's doing with PFPs, and same with Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where we are right now. And the fundamental reason is that decentralization has a lot of benefits. It has a lot of drawbacks too. The biggest drawback is the speed at which you can iterate and develop. And this is true, like, this isn't even true just in technology, right? Like democracy is a fairly decentralized form of governance compared to others. And it is also partly what makes it really slow and infuriating slow, right? But it's decentralized and there's a lot of benefits. And it's like, yeah, like we'll take, when it comes to government, like we'll take those trade-offs, right? same is true for building technology. The speed at which we can ship is 10x, if not 100x faster than on decentralized architecture. And part of that is just because it's decentralized in nature, and part of it is because like the infrastructure, the tooling just like isn't there. And the next step of this, because like there's no like moving fast isn't necessarily good in and of itself, but we really believe that in order, like the best way to build a product that's valuable and to get to a product that's valuable is to just like iterate fast and ship quickly. And that is one of the biggest advantages that we have over incumbents and other people in the space, is that we just feel like we can out execute, and that our goal is like first and foremost to build a valuable product, because that is when decentralization matters, right? Like to us, decentralization doesn't matter if no one is using it. And oftentimes, I mean, maybe this is controversial, but oftentimes I think decentralization is kind of like a hammer looking for a nail a little bit. And there are very valid uses and real, like genuine uses of decentralization, but it seems like something that just like everything is decentralized. It has to be decentralized. If you're not decentralized, right? Like it's not like good enough. And I think that, like there's very real trade-offs in that until we get something that's actually providing genuine value to users, we think it's much better for us to be able to move fast and do things like ship roles in a month, right? Ship real-time chat, like we're gonna ship real-time chat in about a month. And I you just like couldn't do that kind of on decentralized architecture.
I agree with that completely. I also feel like you don't need to be decentralized until the thing that you want to be decentralized is like makes a huge impact when you make a decision, or it's holding a lot of value. But like until which I mean GM hopes to be that in the future, but like until it has billions of users, like it doesn't need to be that. It's like something with 1,000 users, why does that need to be maximally decentralized like Ethereum? I don't understand why people think that. It makes zero sense.
Yeah, we like totally agree with you. And that I think what was the other thing I was gonna say? I just slipped my mind. I forget. If I remember, I'll come back to it. But yeah, we totally agree that it doesn't have to always be decentralized.
Well, I think the challenge that exists is, and I agree that it doesn't have to always be decentralized. I totally support the speed in the beginning, and in order to have speed, you need centralization. But the challenge is when you come down to funding, and if you fund in a investor VC model, then I wonder, how do you decentralize? Like that, I think, is where sometimes there can be challenges, because I'm not sure how. I'm not a finance guy, so I don't know. Like if you got funding, could you decentralize after that? Like, and this might be a different conversation to have in terms of the financial and investment setup of equity versus tokens and decentralization. But yeah, I think that's the one area where I'm not sure how to navigate it. But one example that we've talked about before on the podcast is Maker. You mentioned Maker before. Maker went back and forth several times. I don't know the full story, but if I'm correct, they started decentralized, then they centralized, then they decentralized again. So they went back because exactly what you said, they realized that pace was important, so you needed centralization. And then once they had enough scale, they were able to decentralize. So I guess my question to you is, do you guys have a roadmap? Do you, in terms of like, how do you decentralize? Like, do you guys think about that? Like, is there a framework of what any project could basically take to go from centralized to decentralized?
Yeah. So we don't have like a step-by-step, a path here, but we do think about this a lot, because and the main reason we don't have a step-by-step path is there's a lot of different ways that we can go. And as the time comes, we'll figure out kind of like what makes most sense for us. I think one of the things with decentralization is it's oftentimes a binary descriptor. Like, is this decentralized or is this not? We think about decentralization kind of in two large swaths, which is still probably too too high level. One is like decentralizing governance, and the other is decentralizing data. And most likely, we'll see, most likely we'll go the decentralized governance first, right? Where like we may still be running like a kind of like Web2 stack, but the ownership, the decision-making, things like that are done in a decentralized way. So that would likely be the first step. And we kind of have to figure out like what that path looks like for us. Yeah, Maker has a pretty good model. Uniswap has like similar models. So we're like looking at those. I'm sure we won't follow anything exactly, but we're looking at what other people have done in this space successfully, because one of the other big issues in the space is just like all the tokens that are create all this speculation. And it's this massive problem for so many projects because it completely obscures whether you're actually doing anything that's valuable or not. Because like if people think they can make money, especially during a bear or a bull market, it really obscures like any notion, like, do you have product market fit, which like is fundamentally kind of like all that matters at the end of the day, at least for a long-term kind of like sustainable business. Yeah, we're really wary kind of about talking about tokens or about kind of like committing to that path, because there's a lot of issues with it as well. But we think a lot about what decentralized governance would look like. Then there's the decentralized data piece, which is like typically kind of what people think more of as decentralization, right? Is this thing actually like running on chain? Again, we don't know exactly what this will look like. One of the other reasons that we like progressive decentralization is that the infrastructure, we at least believe the infrastructure right now is not in the place to support a like global scale social network that people expect, right? People expect real-time feedback. They expect people to like click like and have it be liked. They expect real-time notifications, even real-time like chat and DMs. And there's just like not, there's like the technology, like you could maybe try to do something, but it probably wouldn't be fully decentralized and it wouldn't be scalable in kind of like the way that we need it. And we think that those standards are going to change because they're changing really fast already. Like there's a lot of cool projects that are kind of like out there. They're doing things kind of like in decentralized storage. And we are wary of hitching our cart to the wrong horse, and really committing and building something kind of like on like whatever the technology is today. And then 2 years down the road, something else comes out. It's like, oh man, like we just architected our entire application pre-product market fit, but kind of like around this like one technology, that now like clearly there's a use case that's, or there's a technology that fits our use case better. So that's another one of our hesitations with jumping into decentralization kind of before product market fit. If I had to put it out there, what I would roughly say is like find product market fit, figure out how we're going to decentralize governance, and then figure out how we're going to decentralize data. Again, don't hold us to that. And all those can look very different ways, right? Decentralizing governance doesn't strictly mean a token or anything like that, but that's roughly the path we think about.
When you say decentralized data, are you talking about like the content that we're creating and posting on top of GM, or are you talking like there's also user data, which I guess you guys probably don't really collect because we're just connecting with a wallet anyway. So you already have kind of erased that side of it, but there's definitely like the interactions and things we're doing on the site. Is that what you mean by decentralized data?
Yeah. So think like ideally in the end state, like go like way down the road, like that stuff would be decentralized. Yeah.
Right.
And that would be like, user data. It'd be like user generated content, communities, things like that, like would be kind of like would be decentralized. And I think the even more important piece to us is that it's user owned. And that comes a lot with decentralization. But one of the issues I think you mentioned this in like your the podcast that just released, like going down the rabbit hole podcast. But like one of there's two huge issues we see with Web2 social networks. One is that they have data monopolies, right? Like Facebook does not share data with YouTube, does not share data with TikTok, right? Let alone does not share data with like whatever the startup that's trying to do something new. And we think that really like stifles a ton of innovation kind of like in this space. And a good case study is Twitter with this. In the early days, Twitter had open APIs. All these things were built on top of it, right? The bird came out of other people, like the like Twitter bird wasn't Twitter. The Twitter mobile app was like acquired. There's like a lot of things that came out of having kind of like open APIs and data that's not kind of like siloed. And then, like most Web2 social networks, they realized they can make a ton of money on ads. And if they allowed other clients to build on top of them, they could just filter out ads. So they shut down their APIs, and that was kind of like the end of that. I think that's a massive issue and is really holding back kind of like the social space. The second big issue is that current social networks, outside maybe the exception like YouTube a little bit, have an 100% take rate, which means that all the value that's generated, like all the like eyeballs that are on Facebook, on TikTok, on Instagram, that are seeing ads, and that are there seeing ads because of content that other people create. The people who are creating that content don't see any of that, right? Reddit, for example, right? The person who created ETH Finance, who created Wall Street Bets, right? Like they don't see like any of that value, massive value. I'm like, right? Like Wall Street Bets has what? It has like, it doesn't like, it's like tens of millions of people, right? And the people who have put like blood, sweat, and tears into like moderating that community, starting that community, creating content in that community, see none of that. And for us, that's kind of a huge issue, and a huge, like, and a perfect use case kind of for Web3 is actually kind of like giving communities ways to kind of like monetize and actually like see some of that value, and then two, giving individuals themselves kind of ways to kind of get value from their content, their work.
I love that. And, you know, it's interesting. I like the way you guys are kind of doing this of like, let's see where the tech goes. Cause you're right. The tech is not ready in Web3. The tech is not ready for social, not even close. I mean, the UX of Web3 is absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
I say this in every podcast, I think. But what's interesting, you have like Lens, who's like kind of on the other spectrum, right? Where they're like, let's just do it full on. Let's experiment and see what happens, which is cool. But like you can't really, I mean, it's only been launched for like a few weeks or whatever, a few months now. So I don't want to like harp on them at all because I love what Lens is doing. But like you couldn't go and put 100,000 person community on there right now. Like you got to switch over your network every time you want to get in, and then you got to sign every transaction just to like comment. It's crazy. So I like kind of slow playing it, see how it goes, but like integrating in and doing everything you can to be as Web3 as possible. I'm curious though, whether you do go fully decentralized and you decentralize the data or not. We just talked about like what the business model is of big tech, which is basically let's take all your data and then let's sell ads. I asked Brad the same thing here on Lens. What's the business model of GM? If not ads, how do you guys make money? Or what's the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, a lot of different paths we could go. I think a few that are most top of mind. One is honestly maybe boring, for lack of a better word, and is that we're kind of in this weird, like, not quite like we're not really kind of like B2C. We're also, they're like DAOs aren't like fully businesses, but but there's kind of this like hybrid. I think there's potentially a lot of functionality that we could offer communities, particularly like larger communities, that they'd be willing to pay for. So I think a very simple, very Web2 sort of business model would be to have premium features. And one thing we like talk about some, it goes back to the support thing, right? Like potentially like a very simple support system where like every community, there's like a support channel, and you go to the support channel and it's like you clicked on like the talk to sales on a website, and you're talking with the community moderators, and like it's verified through like signing a wallet. They're actually talking to community moderators. On the moderator side, they have some like ticketing system where they can see who's talking, they can assign it to people, they can set priorities, something like that, right? Like just pretty basic way to provide support for your community. So that's kind of a simple thing. And there's a lot more that we could kind of offer on this. So that's kind of like one route. I mean, we may end up at a hybrid. I don't know, but that's one route. The second is much more kind of like Web3 crypto approaches that potentially taking cuts of transactions. And there's a number of different ways that this could look. Maybe an obvious one, or like first one that jumps to mind is that it would be pretty natural once we had communities going to facilitate transactions inside of GM, right? Like, hey, like that's cool NFT, like let me put an offer on it, right?
Right.
that, like Facebook Marketplace, has been kind of like quite successful. That there could be something like that on GM as well, and we could take kind of those transactions. Another one that we're like really excited about, that we think a lot about, we're gonna like really start making moves on in the next couple weeks, is kind of like this like GM name service, similar to ENS, but I think the thing that's particularly exciting about it is we could actually do it. We think about it in the context of communities. So I think the best way to motivate this is, again, think about like Wall Street Bets, creators of Wall Street Bets see no value. And then also think about in this context of that we have role-based or like token-based roles, right? So if you own a particular whatever, if you own a punk in a community, you could be granted right access to whatever, like the punk's internal topic or something like that. What we could do, what we talk about kind of with this GNS, is that we actually issue NFTs for communities themselves, and that whoever owns the NFT, we give like super admin rights to for a particular community. So whichever wallet owns like the C/GM NFT, like we would verify that they own that, and that would grant that wallet super admin rights to that community. And it actually turns like communities into assets potentially, right? Where like there is value in being the owner of a large community, and that that solves a couple of problems, or like doesn't solve a problem, but like it addresses a few things for us. One, it again gives community managers, people who create communities, people who like putting work into communities, like an actual asset that accrues value. Two, we could also take a cut of when those assets change hands. Potentially even like charge for minting those. But like it seems unlikely we'll do that. And we wouldn't do that solely for a kind of like monetization route. It'd be more about kind of like reducing spam and things like that. But that's also a route that we can monetize. So those are kind of like two high level like routes that we could go down in terms of monetization.
That role idea I love. So quick story, 4 years ago, I think it was 4 years ago or so, I was a health coach, right? And I built like an online course and a membership and all this. And I had a podcast and that, but I was in a bunch of Facebook groups for my ideal customer, and I was just posting content in there. This is how I get all my clients. And the guy that owned this Facebook group, which had like 60,000 people in it, it was huge. He DM'd me and he's like, "Do you want to buy my Facebook group off me and be the admin?" And I was like, at first I laughed. I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then I was like, "Wait a minute. I could own this group of 60,000 people." And it was like getting hundreds of people in it every single day. It was crazy. And I was like, how much? And so he like made me an offer, and I was like, "Hey, how do I do this? Like, I have to give him money somehow, and then he's got to make me an admin." So like, I ended up getting some like, what do you call it? Where you get like an intermediary to like do it. And I sent them the money, and then he had to make me, and I bought it off him. It was awesome. But it was the weirdest experience of my life. And then Facebook blocked me and shut it all down.
And then Kyle got rugged by Facebook.
Yeah, then I got rugged by Facebook.
I mean, wow.
It was crazy story, but that I can see right now, this role idea with the NFTs is like, oh, that's an immediate, like perfect situation if that would have, because it would have been so easy to do it all.
So easy.
I love that idea. It's super smart. So cool.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different things there that we're excited about. It goes back to your kind of question about like differentiation, right? And like the things that we can do because we have a wallet linked, that other players like won't be able to do. And we're not there yet. Like, again, we're trying to build a lot of like table stakes features, which we're pretty close to. We're probably honestly like, I mean, there'll always be stuff like that. But we're probably like a month or 2 months away from like really having a lot of those like table stake features done. And then after that is when I'm really excited, because they'll start being a lot of these kind of like more kind of differentiated Web3 native kind of features, some of which will just replace bots on Discord, but some of which will be kind of like brand new functionality.
Can I put in a feature request?
Yeah, absolutely. All yours.
So one of the things that our community has been trying to figure out, we're looking to launch a token as well. It's going to be valueless because we don't want any speculation. We just want to use it as kind of like a point system, just as we start forming and structuring the community. And the problem we're having with Discord is, well, we want to be able to like tip or send the tokens to people who are contributing in our community. And it's like, in order to do that, we have to DM them like, yo, what's your Ethereum address?
Yeah.
And then we have to keep it on file and like make sure we go and check it. It's like, why can't I just click on their name and like send, you know? So that's whoever builds that, like there is like a bot that does it, but it only for a few tokens. We need that. So GM,
I am so excited you brought this up. It's something, this is generally something we talk a lot about, is that this idea of like we have this like rep system built into the platform, right now, just like a pretty basic calculation, kind of like Reddit karma. But this idea of like rewarding community members is something that a lot of community moderators we talk about ask about. Like, hey, like we like there are people, right? Small number of people who are putting this community on their back. Like we want to recognize them, want to reward them, but it's hard. So we absolutely like this 100% is in our roadmap, to one, make it a lot easier to see who in your community is active. There's a lot of cool stuff we could do here where you could see people in community who are active. You could also see whatever, like if you have a token, how many tokens they own, how long have they held your tokens, things like that. So you could have this like an intersection of cool data there. And then two, making it really easy to do airdrops, right? It's like, hey, like whatever, send a POAP or send an NFT to the first 1,000 people who joined, right? Or like send it to like this specific person who we're going to do whatever, an NFT for like the top post each week, right? The most interesting post, right? So like, here's a person, like send them an NFT. Another one of the things that we see as providing a lot of value is potentially helping communities go from like tokenless to tokened, right? And they start on GM not having a token, and then when they make the decision, like, hey, we want to have a token, like at first they'll probably be a very manual process that will handhold them and like do it, but potentially like productionize this where it's like, hey, like, okay, you want like issue a token, click issue token. Like, what do you want? You want ERC20? Do you want ERC71? Boom. Like, how many do you want? Here are the users. How do you want like divide it? Do you want like upload whatever, like CSV of addresses, or do you want it to be on GM sorted by interaction, or like how do you want to do this? And you click issue, and like we just like spin it all up, right? Kind of in the background, like send it out. So there's a ton of stuff that we could do there, because I think what you just said is something that we hear pretty regularly from people who run kind of like active communities.
Right. Web3 is going to be so much cooler when all that is actually possible.
Yeah,
so much fun.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up here, I just have one kind of final question. I think Jay's got a bunch of like speed round questions for you. But if we were to just zoom out, and I don't know if you have anything to add in here, but just taking a look at where Web3 and social and communication and communities, where that and how that looks 5 years, 10 years, I don't know, whatever time frame you want to give, like, how do you think that this all changes? Like right now we're predominantly on Web 2 and there's like people playing around in some Web 3 stuff, but where do you think this goes? What do you think the big changes are?
I think two fundamental changes are going to happen, and they're both like similar, and it's kind of like a splintering. One of which is, I think, this idea of having multiple clients, I think is going to become a reality in one way or another. I mean, like Elon talks about this some, even with Twitter. Is that it's not just going to be like there's like 5 social networks and it's fundamental, it's like all siloed. I think someone will show how valuable it is to have like competition when it comes to clients and things like that. I think that will be kind of like the long-term winning architecture. I think the second thing, we didn't touch on this, but I think the second thing that we see is, I think there's gonna be kind of like a splintering of identities kind of in social. I think right now it's kind of like hybrid, like some people do this, right, where they'll have like different like synonymous accounts for different interests in their life. But we're not really there, like a lot of us, myself included, kind of just have like a single real identity account. I think we'll increasingly see, particularly as like generations grow up, who are like born like truly into like a very like social like digital social world. People have like multiple identities online, right? They might have a work identity, they might have their sports fan identity, they might have their professional, or I guess that work, they might have like some identity on like whatever for community, a particular project they're working on. I think we're going to see that like become increasingly more common.
Super interesting to think about that. I don't know how that, we should have a whole podcast about how that plays out. And we've had multiple conversations on the podcast. Our podcast that is coming out this week is with GM.xyz, and they're doing a lot of work around identity. We've talked to Unstoppable Domains and their thoughts on identity. And
It's really interesting.
Very, very interesting. Yeah. All right. Any final questions, Kai, before I jump into the speed round?
Let's head to speed round.
Okay, let's do it. What's one NFT you'll never sell?
Oh, that's a good question. I have a squiggle that I bought at
Ooh.
peak prices. Like
That's
genuinely,
why
I think I hit the peak within 2 weeks. Honestly, it's the most down bad I've really been. But I love art blocks. I think what they do is like so unbelievably like cool. Especially when you dive into like how they're different from other NFT projects and other kind of like algorithmically like generated NFT projects. It's like incredible, and Squirrel's like being the first. I think it's really, really cool, but down bad.
I love it.
That's great. Yeah, big fan of art blocks as well. What's another Web3 other than GM? Another Web3 project you're excited about? Could be crypto, could be NFT, could be a DAO, could be anything.
Good question. A few different answers for this. One, DeFi protocol I learned about kind of a while ago. It was one of the ones that honestly got me really excited about DeFi originally. It's called Alchemix. It's like a self-repaying loan. It just seems like such a good use kind of DeFi, and I follow it some, and it's exciting. So that's one. Another one I really like wine. And there's this DAO that just issued an NFT called Avinco, I think. Avinco.
Okay.
And they have some like winery in Napa, and like I don't know. I'll see where it goes. Definitely, this is not financial advice by any means.
Well, obviously, you're down bad. Don't listen.
But I think there's a lot in this space. I'm like, obviously, like Constitution DAO is like the first one, like kind of like really kicked a lot of this off. There's what's the golf course one? There's
Links DAO.
Yeah, Links DAO, right?
Yeah,
There's a lot that are kind of like interesting in this space that, like, to be totally honest, I don't really understand how the financials work. Like it doesn't compute to me. Which is part of where I'm like, I go in kind of expecting, I don't know, 100% loss, but I'm really interested in kind of like what that, like, I'm really interested in like what it could turn into, because it's like that intersection is something I think that has yet to really be kind of like figured out and nailed down. So projects like that, even though I like don't quite get how the like financials work, I'm really interested to see how they play out, because I think there's a lot of potential, but I just don't quite know what it's going to look like in the end.
Cool. One thing you've bought recently for under $100 that has brought you joy, and it does not have to be a digital product. It can be a physical product.
Oh, probably a bottle of wine. Yeah, I like wine. Been drinking a lot of like Lambrusco. It's like a sparkling red that I really enjoy.
Ooh.
And they're like, it's nice because like even like good Lambruscos are still like $15 or $20. So they're not that expensive. And in hot summer days, it's very enjoyable to have like a chilled sparkling red.
Central Park, New York, hot sunny days.
Yeah,
sounds
like,
pretty nice.
Very nice.
You mentioned, this is my final question. You mentioned early on in the podcast that you guys, what you initially started doing has changed along the way, and I think that's just such a valuable lesson for founders and operators right now. Is and probably one of the biggest takeaways I had from NFT NYC was the only way to learn is to jump in to do, and you don't need to know the end result. You just got to sort of take the next step and learn along the way. So if you had a billboard to any Web3 founder or any person that's getting involved in Web3, and this billboard, your advice, what would you put on that billboard?
It's a tough one.
Two things that I think about, have thought about recently, that I've like internalized and wish that I had like thought of or like understood sooner. One is that this is this will sound kind of funny when I say it, but like the bar for people caring about things is much lower than I thought it was. Like it's easy. It was easy for me to think that like you needed to have something radical, something totally different, something really exceptional for people to care. And the reality is like it's hard to get people to care for sure, but I'm consistently surprised with GM at like how much people seem to like care and be interested and ask questions. And I think I was kind of like, I don't know, it's like the fear of failure, the fear of people like not caring, like putting yourself out there, putting kind of like energy into something, and then people are like, why are you doing this? Like who cares? And Web3 in particular, I think is incredible for that. Right? People are so supportive. It's honestly incredible. So that's the big thing. That's the first big thing I would say, is that like the bar for people like caring about something is much lower than it seems like it is. The second thing is exactly what you said. Like creativity, innovation is in the process. It's not like an epiphany moment. That GM the way it is right now is not like we 2 months ago we had like, okay, we know our path, like that's what we're doing. We did it for a month. And we're like, wait, like we got, and this was on me. Like Mike, I always like joke with Mike that Mike's always like 6 weeks ahead of me on product, because I'll like push back on Mike's ideas, and then like 6 weeks later I come back like, no, you're right. Like we should have. And this is like exactly what happened. Like we were like, okay, like we need to focus more on like getting communities built, like getting them like onboarded, things like that. And we tried it, we learned a ton. We're like, okay, no, like the reality is like the product isn't where it needs to be. Like we don't have those table stakes features, and that has like shifted our focus. Like, okay, like now we just need to build. So like that's by far the biggest thing, is that starting somewhere, like wherever it is, like start, and it's absolutely going to change. And like the innovation happens in that process, right? Like the innovation doesn't happen up front. Like the innovation is like comes with the process and the doing. And that's also something that I wish I had kind of internalized or known sooner.
That's awesome. There's a couple really good quotes there that we'll for sure want to pull out and share. Want to give you a chance to tell people where they can find you online. Give your shill, anything you want to ask to the audience, how they can get involved with GM.
Yeah, absolutely. So website's GM.xyz. Go there, check it out. Like I said, you have to like sign with ETH, but check it out. There's a C/GM community. That's kind of like the community for like us, for like the GM product. Tons of people share feedback. We build in the open. Like we're strong believers in building the open. We share designs before we've even started on them. We share roadmaps, we share features, we share demos, and we ask for community feedback. And all the time, community feedback impacts our roadmap, impacts what we build, impacts what it looks like. So if you're interested, like yeah, sign in and like give us all as much feedback as you want. Is genuinely like the most helpful thing. Twitter, GM.xyz on Twitter. It's like GM.xyz. Because on Twitter, we do the same thing, ask for feedback, share a bunch of demos, things like that. And you can find me at Grant Magdanz, Magdanz, on Twitter as well. That's us.
Awesome. We will put all those links in the show notes. Grant, this has been awesome. Really, really appreciate you coming on the show. This is, I feel like we're going to need a part 2. And I was going to say 6 months, but it might be in 1 month at the pace that things are moving.
Let's do it. Yeah. No, this was awesome. Thank you, man.
Thanks, Grant.
Thank you for listening to Web3 Academy. We hope this helps you along your Web3 journey. And if it does, please share this episode and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. By the way, if you've yet to join the Discord community, you are missing out. This is where all the magic happens. This is where we learn, where we ask questions, where we network. You want to be in there. The link to join is in the description below. And finally, a quick disclaimer. Nothing in this podcast was financial advice. Crypto and Web3 can be risky. You can literally lose it all. In fact, if you invest on account of what we say, you probably will lose it all. So don't do that. In all honesty, the point of this podcast is to remove the noise of markets and price and focus on utility and implementation anyway. So you should not take any of this as financial advice. Thank you, friends, and see you in the next one.